Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Sasha Krause? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Sasha Marie Krause was born on April 8, 1992, in Temple, Texas. When she was 11 years old, her parents, Robert and Laura, joined a Mennonite church. In 2018, she moved to a Mennonite community called Lamp and Light in Farmington, New Mexico. She shared a house with other women on the compound and worked for a publishing business run by the church. She would translate religious texts using her language skills. Sasha could speak 3 languages. She was also a substitute Sunday school teacher. There are a lot of different churches under the Mennonite banner. Most Mennonites reject modern technology. Others are a little less stringent. They are generally nonviolent and adhere to a doctrine of non-resistance. They will not fight even when attacked. They believe in pacifism. There is no one description that covers all Mennonites. The belief system of any particular follower is highly dependent on the specific church they belong to. In the case of the compound where Sasha was, they appeared to be conservative, like most Mennonites. For example, there was a curfew of 10 p.m. on the compound. Sasha followed the rules of the church and was very devoted to the Mennonite way of life. Her community restricted the use of some technology, but Sasha did have a cell phone and a motor vehicle. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On January 18, 2020, 27-year-old Sasha Krause drove to a church on the compound at about 8 p.m. to retrieve books for a Bible study she was going to be teaching in Colorado the next day. After a few hours, her roommates noticed that Sasha had not returned to the house. They tried to reach her on her cell phone, but did not have success. They walked to the church and found Sasha's vehicle, but there was no sign of Sasha. They notified a church leader, who eventually reported Sasha as missing. Here's what the police found during their investigation. Sasha's vehicle was unlocked and her keys were inside. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no items were scattered about. Her credit cards and purse were in her residence. Investigators searched for Sasha, but she was nowhere to be found. Sasha did not have a romantic partner or any enemies. The police had no idea what happened to her and no good leads. On February 21, 2020, over a month after Sasha went missing, her body was discovered by a camper in Coconino National Forest. This is not far from Flagstaff, Arizona. Her body was fully clothed and lying face down. Her hands were bound in front of her body with duct tape. Her head covering and underwear were missing. Sasha had been shot one time in the back of the head with a .22 caliber firearm and sustained blunt force injuries to her head. Sasha's cell phone was never recovered, but the police were able to collect data from her cell phone provider. At 7:52 p.m. on the day Sasha went missing, her phone was in Farmington, New Mexico. At 8:58 p.m., it was about 60 miles west at the New Mexico-Arizona border. After that, the phone stopped connecting to the network. The police obtained search warrants for all the cell phone providers in the area to look for any phone that was in all 3 places where Sasha had been: Farmington, New Mexico, the New Mexico-Arizona border, and where her body was found near Flagstaff, Arizona. After reviewing the data, it was clear that there was only one phone that had been to all 3 places. This phone belonged to a 21-year-old aircraft mechanic named Mark Daniel Gooch, who served at the Luke Air Force Base near Phoenix, Arizona. His phone had traveled the same route as Sasha's phone until her phone disconnected. Mark's phone continued to the area where Sasha's body was found and remained there for 2 hours. After departing this area, the phone traveled back to Luke Air Force Base. Investigators looked into Mark's background. He had been raised and educated in a Mennonite community until he refused to be baptized and stopped participating in church services. Mark earned a GED and joined the military. People who knew Mark said he harbored a deep resentment for the Mennonite church. Mark was arrested in connection with Sasha's murder. He went to trial in 2021 and was convicted of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and misdemeanor theft. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the first-degree murder conviction, a consecutive term of 5 years for the kidnapping, and time served for the misdemeanor theft. Now moving to my analysis. Mark Gooch maintained his innocence. Many people support him, believing that he was committed to nonviolence. They say he never would have killed Sasha Krause or anyone. The state has a different theory. They believe that Mark had a grudge against the Mennonite church and murdered Sasha for this reason. This brings me to the question, was Mark actually guilty? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that Mark was guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. Mark admitted that he was at the Farmington, New Mexico Mennonite community on the night that Sasha disappeared. This was over 6 hours from the military base where he lived. Mark initially lied to investigators and said he had not been outside of the state of Arizona recently. When he was caught in this lie, he said he forgot making the trip to New Mexico. He went to Farmington to attend a church service. He said he knew members of the community, but the police determined that he didn't know anyone there, including Sasha. Mark's cell phone traveled along a path similar to Sasha's cell phone, as if the two phones were together for part of the trip. Mark's phone was at the site where Sasha's body was found. A few days after she was murdered, his cell phone traveled back to this site. On the day Sasha went missing, January 18, 2020, surveillance video from the military base captured Mark leaving in the morning. He returned the following morning. In the week before Sasha's murder, Mark communicated with his brother Samuel about conducting surveillance of Mennonite communities in the area. Cell phone data indicated that Mark had visited several Mennonite communities in the Phoenix area. Mark also communicated with his brother Jacob, who was a Virginia state trooper. Jacob texted about how he coughed on a Mennonite he pulled over in order to give him COVID-19. Mark seemed excited about this action. Due to this text message, Jacob resigned from his position as a Virginia state trooper. When news of Sasha's disappearance became public, Mark repeatedly visited a social media site containing information about her. After Sasha's body was found, Mark had his car professionally detailed and even paid extra money for a complete interior cleaning. That same day, he went to the military base commissary and purchased a bottle of bleach. Mark asked a coworker if he could store his Marlin .22 caliber rifle and .22 caliber ammunition in the coworker's safe. Mark had asked Samuel to get rid of the rifle. Samuel traveled to Arizona to pick up what he believed to be Mark's rifle from the coworker. What Samuel didn't know is that the police had set him up. The coworker had contacted the police and told them about the rifle. The police gave the coworker a fake rifle for Samuel to pick up. After Samuel took possession of this fake rifle, he was arrested. Samuel eventually pleaded guilty to facilitation to commit hindering prosecution. He was sentenced to 3 years of probation. An analysis of Mark's rifle determined that this firearm could not be excluded as the murder weapon. The ammunition that was seized along with the rifle was the same brand used to kill Sasha. Mark submitted multiple requests to delete his location history for January and February of 2020. From jail, Mark asked Samuel to remotely delete all the information from his phone. Moving to the exculpatory factors, there were no witnesses to the kidnapping or the murder, no video, no physical evidence connected Mark to the murder except the brand of ammunition he had for his rifle. That's pretty much it for exculpatory evidence. When considering all the evidence, do I think that Mark was guilty? Yes, I believe he was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Mark grew up in Wisconsin. He was described as a troubled young man who had been suspected of committing several burglaries. His father said that Mark stopped attending Mennonite services because he was not of a converted heart. He had not yet turned from darkness to light. Mark chose a career in the military, which is not allowed by the Mennonites. Interestingly, both his brothers also selected careers that are not permitted. Samuel worked in information technology, and Jacob was a police officer. Mark had conducted surveillance on several different Mennonite locations. It seems clear that he would have been quite satisfied to kidnap and murder any number of people from these communities. He was just waiting for the right opportunity, hoping that a female community member would come out in the open where he could kidnap her. When he arrived at the Mennonite community in Farmington, New Mexico, Mark watched from a distance for about 3.5 hours. When he saw Sasha go to the church, he decided to make his move. She went into the church and retrieved the books that she needed. When she exited, Mark was waiting, along with his rifle. He kidnapped her at gunpoint and drove west into Arizona. At some point, he realized that Sasha had a phone, therefore he deactivated it and disposed of it somewhere along the way. He drove to a remote area near Flagstaff, took Sasha out of his vehicle, hit her with the butt of his rifle, and then shot her in the back of the head. He removed her underwear because he had some type of sexual motive. That's why he targeted a young woman and why he visited her body several days later. With these types of killers, their motives can still be sexual without actually following through with that type of crime. Some people believe that Mark selected a Mennonite victim because he didn't like that community. I think there's more to it than that. A lot of people don't like other people, but they don't commit murder because of it. And even if they do commit murder, they don't kidnap a victim first. Mark was probably struggling with homicidal desires for some time. He was somewhat conflicted about acting on these desires, therefore he convinced himself that it was less objectionable to murder a Mennonite. He told himself that they deserved it because their belief system was strict, unfair, or overbearing. He blamed them for making him into a killer. Therefore, in his mind, they deserved to face his rage. Mark was playing the victim, pretending that the Mennonites had harmed him. He devalued that community in order to rationalize his own deviant behavior. He needed to convince himself that he wasn't simply committing a homicide for self-gratification. Maybe he even deceived himself into believing that his victim was better off dead, like he was saving her from a life of agony. Mark left a long trail of evidence behind him. He was a haphazard criminal, but his low neuroticism allowed him to remain calm as he was being accused of the crime. Now moving to my final thoughts. One thing that really stands out in this case is the juxtaposition between the killer and the victim. In some murder cases, two people are fighting and one kills the other. In other cases, the victim provokes the killer. But in this case, Sasha was 100% innocent. She never met Mark. She had never done anything to offend him. She was not looking for trouble. She was totally committed to nonviolence and non-resistance. Mark took advantage of her commitment to being peaceful so he could increase his chances of getting away with murder. In this situation, Sasha was the light and Mark was the darkness. Those are my thoughts on the case of Sasha Krause. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.